Now let's take a look at backing materials. In front of us here we have a nice little assortment of backing materials. As you can see, backings do come in black and white. The blacks would be used for possibly your darker materials, especially when you're sewing something that's more of an open weave like a PK knit. If you are sewing on a dark colored PK knit and you put a white piece of backing, you can kind of see through that and you'll get a shadow of the white. By putting black backing behind it, it'll make it so that you don't see that. Now there are a couple major types of backing. We've got tearaway backing and cutaway backing. Tearaway backing, as the name implies, when we're done sewing with it, we tear it away from the garment. Cutaway backing, we're going to cut away. Now, backings come in rolls, and if you look at these, okay, you can see that it comes in a certain weight, and this particular roll is tearaway. Okay, the weight of the backing is going to change depending on how stable the material is. And what we mean by stable is how much it stretches. The whole point of backing material is to reduce the stretch of the fabric, therefore stabilizing the sewing field. I have another roll here, and you can see on this one that this in fact is a cutaway and is a 3.5 ounce. Now, we also have this large roll, and what this is cap backing. This is a tearaway product, and the advantage is it's already the height that we need, and we just cut the length of the piece that we need depending on what we're sewing. If we're sewing just the front of the hat, we would cut a smaller piece, maybe 5 or 6 inches. If we're doing a 270-degree sew out, we would possibly cut a piece about 15 inches long or so. Now, as a general rule, tearaway backing is used on woven type materials because woven materials don't have very much stretch. So we can get away with something that doesn't stabilize as much. Your cutaway backings are stabilized much more. So your cutaway backings are typically what we use on knits. And that leads me to some of the specialty type backings. For example, we've got this product here, which is called poly mesh. Okay, the advantage of poly mesh is it's a very thin material, but an extremely strong material. It has no stretch to it. Now, when it comes to any backing, it is possible that you are going to double this up or perhaps use combinations. For example, you will hear of people doing some of the tech materials. You might use 2 pieces of this because we don't want to ruin the flow of the fabric when the person's wearing it. If I needed a piece of cutaway backing for one of those tech materials that stretch a lot, it might have to be a 2.5, 3, maybe even a 3.5 ounce piece of backing. When we use the poly mesh, we can get away with 1, perhaps 2 pieces of this, and it's much thinner so it doesn't ruin the flow, okay, where the garment can move freely. When you put that heavier backing in there, that becomes rather rigid. Now on something like a sweatshirt or a jacket, that doesn't hurt us at all. But when it comes to a material that has a nice flow to it, we don't want to ruin that. You also have things like a poly mesh that's fusible, okay, where we can actually adhere it to the fabric, which adds even more stability. They also have a fusible backing that goes on the outside in the back, okay, but after you're done sewing. And the advantage of that is when you're done with any piece of embroidery, you do have a little bit of backing there, and you have all the little threads that stick out in the back. Well, on like infant and toddlers' clothing, as those threads rub up against the infant's skin, they can irritate the baby's skin. So by putting a piece of this fusible backing over the top of that, it makes it smooth, therefore not irritating the skin. Now there's another product, and that's called water soluble or topping, and it looks like a clear sheet of plastic, and it's sold a couple different ways. This is just one large piece. This would be used for a larger design. And we will sometimes double this product up. And what this is used for is we put this on the front surface, and we use this on anything textured. So if I were doing a terry cloth towel, so the stitches don't sink into the fabric, I would just put this on the front. We would also possibly use this on blankets, polar fleece. Anytime that we feel the stitches are going to sink into the fabric, we would possibly use this material. Now, the reason it's called water soluble, let me grab a little glass of water, is because when it gets laundered or gets wet, it completely dissolves. It is soluble in water. And that's actually how we get rid of it. When we're done sewing, we usually spray it with distilled water, and then we take a damp rag and we wipe over the top of it, or we let the customer launder it, and that will get rid of any excess. Also, they make a cutaway backing material that is wash away. And that's great for things like blankets or towels, where we don't want to be left with any backing on the back side of it, but we need to add stability.